There are moments in conversation when the most important part of what someone is saying is not actually in their words. It's in the pause before they answer, the way their voice changes slightly in the middle of a sentence, or the expression that appears on their face for just a second before they hide it again. Most people hear conversations as they are spoken, but some people experience conversations differently. They hear the words, and at the same time, their mind begins noticing the space around those words, the tone behind them, the hesitation within them, the subtle emotional signals that never quite becomes language. And over time, this creates a very specific experience. You begin understanding things that were never directly said. You start noticing meaning in the silence between sentences, and eventually, you may realize something unusual. You are not just listening to what people say. You are listening to what they are trying not to say. And that ability is what people often describe as reading between the lines. Reading between the lines usually begins with awareness, a natural sensitivity to subtle emotional signals. You may notice when someone's tone changes slightly, or when a response arrives just a little slower than expected. Perhaps someone answers a question politely, but something about the way they say it feels different than their usual tone. Most people might hear the words and continue the conversation, but for some people the mind becomes curious. It begins quietly asking questions. Why did they hesitate? Why did their tone change there? Why did that answer feel slightly incomplete? Over time, this awareness develops into something else. Your mind begins tracking emotional signals almost automatically. Not because you are trying to analyze the conversation, but because your awareness naturally picks up on details. And those small details often reveal meanings that were never spoken directly. For many people, this ability develops gradually over time, often in environments where understanding subtle emotional signals was important. Perhaps you learned early on that people did not always say exactly what they meant, or that the emotional truth of a situation was often hidden beneath polite conversation, so your awareness adapted. Instead of relying only on words, your mind began paying attention to patterns, tone, body language, timing, the emotional energy behind someone's voice. And over time, your brain began connecting those signals, learning that meaning often appears not only in language, but in the spaces surrounding it. Eventually, conversations begin to feel like something deeper than words. They begin to feel like patterns waiting to be understood. Once the mind becomes skilled at reading emotional patterns, something interesting begins to happen. It starts recognizing those patterns everywhere. You may begin noticing when someone's words do not fully match their tone, or when someone says they are fine, but their expression suggests something else. Sometimes the difference is very subtle, just a small energy shift. A pause that lasts slightly longer than the conversation expects, and yet your mind registers it immediately. Not because you are searching for it, but because your awareness has learned to detect inconsistencies. Over time, this ability can make conversations feel layered. Words exist on one level, but emotional meaning often exists on another. And the space between those two layers is where reading between the lines begins. But this ability can also create a unique experience, because when your mind constantly reads between the lines, conversations rarely feel simple. You may notice emotional dynamics that others in the room seem unaware of. A subtle tension is forming, an unspoken disagreement, a hesitation that reveals uncertainty. And sometimes that awareness can feel isolating, because while others hear the conversation exactly as it is spoken, your mind is also hearing everything that remains unspoken. Over time, this can create a quiet mental weight, not because awareness itself is heavy, but because constant interpretation requires energy. Understanding what people mean can be powerful, but constantly translating emotional signals can also be exhausting. Eventually, something else begins to develop. Your understanding becomes faster, less analytical, more intuitive. You may begin sensing meaning before you fully understand how you recognized it. A conversation may feel slightly off, even when the words sound perfectly normal, and often that feeling proves accurate. Because the mind has quietly learned to read patterns beneath the surface, tone, timing, expression, the emotional rhythm of conversation. And when those signals shift, your awareness recognizes it almost instantly. What many people call intuition is often the mind recognizing patterns it has already learned. But there is an important balance within this ability. Reading between the lines can reveal genuine emotional signals, but it can also create assumptions when the mind fills in missing information. Because sometimes a pause is simply a pause. Sometimes a quiet response is not hiding a deeper meaning. And part of developing this awareness is learning the difference between perception and interpretation. Perception notices signals. Interpretation decides what those signals mean. And the two are not always the same. So the most powerful form of awareness is not simply reading between the lines, but recognizing when meaning is truly present there. For some people, reading between the lines will always be part of how their mind works. They will notice subtle emotional signals. They will sense shifts in tone. They will understand the meanings that others may overlook. And that ability can bring deep insight into human behavior. It can reveal emotional truths that remain hidden beneath everyday conversation. But awareness does not always require interpretation. Sometimes the most peaceful moments in conversation are the ones where the mind simply listens, without searching for hidden meaning, without translating every pause. Because while some messages exist between the lines, others exist exactly where they were spoken. And learning when to listen deeply and when to simply hear the words may be the quiet balance that awareness is always searching for. And I'm curious about something. Have you ever noticed yourself understanding what someone meant, even when they never said it directly? Let me know in the comments. You might be surprised how many others experience conversations the same way. I'll see you in the next reflection.